Hi, I'm Jessica McCullough, and I am here with Carrie Bailey. I am a part of the marketing team at Masterbooks and the social media manager. Carrie Bailey is the author of our early learning courses, Stepping Stones and Simply K. She's also the co-author of Math Lessons for a Living Education Level K, and she is the author of our new cursive course, Catch On to Cursive. So welcome, Carrie. Will you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I am Carrie Bailey, a Christian homeschool mom to 3 boys. And I have a background in early childhood education. I also have worked with some special needs students, and I have worked for several years in my church in the education department there.
Great. So you have written 2 early learning courses, Stepping Stones and Simply K, and then you've also co-authored Math Lessons K, which goes hand in hand with Simply K. What is kind of like the overarching idea or the goal behind these early learning courses?
Basically, to provide a developmental approach for academics. A lot of times we just focus on the academics and we don't focus on the whole child. And so these courses take a step back and actually focus on the entire child, like every aspect.
Great. So what age would you recommend stepping stones, and like what are the indications a child would be ready to start? And then how easily does stepping stones segue into Simply K and Math K?
So for stepping stones, you want your child, it's really on their development. So children don't all develop at the same time. We have my oldest son, he didn't walk until it was like 4 days for being 15 months old, whereas my nephew walked at 9 months. So their development wasn't the same at all in that area, but my son might have been counting to 9 or something at that age. And so you just have to gauge your own child on that. I like to say that if they're wanting to learn, they're wanting more structured learning, like a game, they can sit for, like 1 minute times their age. So if they are 3, then they can sit for 3 minutes. If they're 5, they can sit for 5 minutes and give their attention or focus for that amount of time. So when you're looking at the early learning, you may have a 3-year-old that's eager and ready, and you may have a 5-year-old who wants nothing to do with it. So you just kind of have to gauge your own child. If they can hold a pencil or crayon, children at this age a lot of times have not chosen their dominant hand. So it doesn't have to be, I would not make them at this point choose their dominant hand. I have seen mostly girls choose their dominant hand, but, that's not common. So if they can, follow along, follow instruction, basically 1-step directions, if they can do that, then most likely they're ready for stepping stones. And then that leads into Simply K. So stepping stones really provides a playful, playful yet structured approach that will lead into Simply K and the development there. So we're looking at not just getting them academically ready, but getting them also physically ready to be able to sit longer and be able to do the fine motor control and things like that they will need for Simply K and Math K.
Great. So we often say that stepping stones, Simply K, Math K, we say they're developmentally appropriate. Mm-hmm. But what does that mean? Can you explain that to everyone?
Yes. So if it's developmentally appropriate, it's going to meet the child at their developmental level. That doesn't mean, a lot of times with education, we only focus on the academic level. We don't look at the whole child. We just focus on that one part. And what gets us in trouble is that a lot of times they may have the intellectual maturity to be able to do a task, but they may not have the emotional maturity or stamina to be able to actually complete it. So then what that does is that adds stress on the child. And then they, in turn, have a negative response towards learning. And so that's not what we want. We want to take a step back and look at their development. What are they ready for? Not just academically, but in all aspects, all areas, taking in the entire child, like what are they ready for, and meeting them where they're at.
That's great. I mean, that whole child approach is so essential to having a really great foundation that you set, that the rest of learning can be set on, you know?
Yes.
So sometimes we also say that we talk about having a gentle start. And oftentimes when people are talking, they look at this as a weakness. They think a gentle start is a weak thing, but we actually view that as a strength at Masterbooks. Can you address this topic of concern that many parents have, and then possibly even share a little bit of the science that has come out in recent years that encourages a gentle start?
Sure. I know, like, even in foreign countries, not just in the US, that when they do a more gentle approach, they do a more play-based approach, children learn through play. That has been documented for years and years and years, but they learn so much. I mean, in pretend play, they're learning communication, they're learning cooperation, they're learning cause and effect. There's so many things that we just look at it as, oh, they're just playing. No, they're learning. And so when we have that play-based learning, then we are able to, engage them where they are at. We're able to build the connections of what that they need to be able to, build a good foundation for us to build on. The other thing about the being gentle that reminds me, like, I immediately was reminded of a scripture where it talks about in the Bible that he is gentle to shepherd those with young. And it's talking about God is gentle to shepherd us. And I think a lot of times we think the word rigor is a good word, when in actuality, if you look up that definition, it's rigid. I mean, I don't know about you, but the whole point of parenting and discipling my children is really not from a rigid, that's not how Christ does with me. And so I always try to take it back and say, okay, if he is gentle with me and shepherds me gently, then that's how I also need to do it. And God is all powerful. So for us to say that that's weak is kind of comical in a way. Because it's not a weak approach at all. It actually has strength in it. What we are doing is just setting a solid foundation, yet doing it in a gentle way. It's just like when we're starting out feeding our children. I don't shove something in their mouth when they're not ready to even chew and swallow. They would choke. It's the same thing with our work and our schoolwork. I mean, if I'm shoving things at them, again, it's just going to cause stress, and it will turn them off from wanting to learn.
Absolutely. And even on a personal level, with my own experience, I can see the difference in my children that I possibly didn't take the gentle approach that Masterbooks uses. And I can see the negative impacts of that, and that there have been some struggles that we've had to overcome because of that.
Yes.
It's been difficult to instill a love of learning in those situations, where then I have some children that have been able to use Masterbooks from the beginning. They've had that gentle start, and their desire for learning, their love of learning is just off the charts. I mean, they love opening their school books and working, and they love all of that. So just on a personal, like an actual real life level, I've seen the difference that it makes in my own life.
Yes, absolutely. I have as well.
So let's kind of talk about the practical side of things with your courses. What does a day in each course look like? For instance, like how much time would be expected to be used each day, and how supply intensive are the courses? Like what subjects are covered? Can you talk about a little bit about just the practical side of the courses?
Sure. For stepping stones, there's not a ton of supplies in there. I would say on time, probably no more than 5 to 10 minutes for a lesson. And for Simply K, I would probably, and when I say that, so I'm bundling Simply K and Math K. I would think Simply K about 15 to 20 minutes, and then Math K 5 to 10. So really around 30 minutes a day. And that is Simply K is 3 days a week, and Math K is 5 days a week. The last 2 days of Math K are more of review and reinforcement. And so they could be used, or if a parent chooses to skip them or add them into the 3 days, then they can also do that. And again, this is one of those things where you want to gauge your child. If you can see that they're done, they're getting frustrated, let them take a play break. Come back later, and try again. You could even split up Simply K and Math K if that helps them with the break.
Okay, great. And then can you tell us what subjects are covered in Simply K?
Okay, in Simply K, we have Bible, we have rhyme time, there's ABCs and more, and then there's also life skills taught, and there's a little bit of science and social studies mixed in with those life skills. It's not necessarily a full-blown course. Some people will find, depending on their state requirements, that it's enough. Others need a full course, which Masterbooks is coming out with those. So I'm very excited about those. And they will also have that kind of same approach. They won't be really long. So that's another great thing. Let's see. In the rhyme time, the children it blends in with their topic of the week. It also blends in with their alphabet. So they may search for the letters of the week within that rhyme time. Life skills will vary throughout it. We take everything from table manners, place settings, to what do you do in natural disasters if a hurricane or tornado or something like that is coming. How to dial 911. Tying your shoes, all different sorts of life skills are included in there. And then Bible is not just the typical Bible stories that most children see. It's a little bit more in depth, but not too much. And again, on that part, it is kind of scripted for the parent. And so they will also notice that there's times for a longer Bible portion. So they may want to kind of scale that back or paraphrase the Bible story from the lesson.
Great. We used Simply K last year. I used it with one of my kids, and we really enjoyed it so much. We loved the Bible sections, and we loved that it wasn't just the stories, but there were often activities that we got to use to apply what we were learning about. So we had a lot of fun with Simply K. Upon completion of Simply K and Math Lessons K, what should students be ready for when they finish those courses?
So if they complete Simply K, they are honestly ready to move on to Foundations Phonics, because Foundations takes a quicker approach. In Simply K, they're going to be, learning all of their letters and their sounds. And then in Foundations, they start with their letters, and then I think it's lesson 3 or 4 that they begin blending and building and making words and reading those words. And so again, it is a faster approach. So it's better if they already have that foundation laid from Simply K to just move right into that course seamlessly.
Absolutely.
My own son did that, and I think that yours is as well right now. And then with Math K, what we did, Angela and I got together, and she would kind of tell me what she felt like needed to be in the course based on what was in Math Lessons 1. It had also helped that I had personally been through that with one of mine. And so I basically just, everything in that is kind of preparing them not just for the actual math part of it, but for also developing their critical thinking prior to going into more difficult math.
Yeah. Just like you mentioned, we have transitioned this year from the Simply K and Math K into Foundations Phonics and Math Lessons 1. And really, it has been a very seamless transition. I love the the foundation that Simply K set for like just phonemic awareness.
Mhm.
And some of that happened so naturally through the course where it didn't
Yes.
feel like we were like going through like rote memorization, or we were really having to, pound down these things, but it just became like through the poetry, you know, listening for those sounds. And
Yes.
it just became like a natural extension of what we were doing in our life, even to the point where my son was starting to point out in regular conversation, oh, I heard that sound. So it's been
Yeah.
great. And flowing into Foundations Phonics has just been really very easy. And we are a
Mhm.
few weeks into that now, and he's doing very well.
Yes.
So, okay, so we kind of went through the early learning courses that you've authored. So I want to switch gears a little bit and move into a course that we are all really, really excited about. Catch on to Cursive is set to release this fall. So
Mhm.
let's talk about that a bit. We've discussed the importance of developmentally appropriate curriculum
Yes.
already. So, can you give us a little bit of information on how you were able to incorporate those ideas with Catch on to Cursive?
Sure. So catch on to cursive is our target goal or grade level was around third grade. So I actually have a son who's right about that age. So when I was writing this, I was trying to think about him, but we also wanted it to be able like for older students. So I was thinking about my older son as well. Um, but when you think about the way that children learn, it doesn't matter if they are a teenager or if they're younger. They all still need that whole child approach. And so, even if you think about it, like God is triune and he made us to be triune as well. And so, you have body, mind, and spirit. And a lot of times, we talked about that in education, we only focus on the mind part, we forget the body part, and we forget the spirit part. But the problem is that you're neglecting two vital parts of who we are. And so there are exercises that will help them within the course focus on different muscles that actually help in handwriting. And then we also have Bible woven in there. And then, of course, we have the handwriting, the academic part in there.
Great. So it sounds like this is a little bit different than most of the courses that I'm going to see on the market today that deal with handwriting. Um, and can you maybe highlight a few of the things that make it stand out from the other stuff on the market?
Sure. One of the things that Masterbooks has done with this course is when we started talking about it, I'm a very visual person, and a few of my children are also very visual. So I wanted to make sure that we had a visual cue to be able to help them to know where does the letter go on the lines. So we have visual cues for that. It is a Masterbooks exclusive hand drawn artwork by Angela Odell's daughter, Katie. And she has done a phenomenal job. She's doing a lot more of the artwork in the course, and I'm very excited about that. And so I'm glad that that's exclusive to Masterbooks, because we could have went and borrowed something else that someone else did, but I didn't want to borrow someone else's work. I wanted to say, okay, what works for us? What would work to help these children to visually, give them a cue as to where things need to go and how the strokes need to go. And we also really focus on the way to make the letters, like the strokes and the formation. The reason that is because even like Charlotte Mason, when she would teach handwriting, she actually would teach just like if she was doing a manuscript A. So she would just teach a slanted line. And after her students had mastered that slanted line, then she would take them in and start teaching them the letter A. And so she would teach the strokes before she ever taught the actual letter. So we've kind of blended that thinking in with this, and we're teaching the strokes. And so they don't start out like just copying. At first, when we were kind of coming together on this, there were some questions of, well, they're not making enough words, or, well, they're not doing this. And I actually took a step back and said, well, actually, by the first 9 weeks, they're making some nonsense words. But I personally have used other handwriting courses. And as my oldest son even recently said, well, none of them work. And the reason I feel like a lot of them haven't worked for us is because they're only focusing on one aspect, or they only want you to just copy something. And the problem is that copy work is good if you know how to make the letter. If we don't know how to make the letter, then it's no different than me doing artwork and drawing something that I'm just copying. And so that's why this approach is definitely different.
Great. So you mentioned before that the target age is around third grade. Is that like, hey, only around third graders can use this, or really what students are able to use this course?
So another thing that the masterbooks team talked about was, we know that there are children who are older, like teenagers, who do not know how to write in cursive. So what I did is I went through the course and I made up a separate schedule that would be a more rapid pace for an older student, and then also include other activities, because we don't want them to just know how to form the letter but not be able to, they will be writing in the regular schedule, but we didn't want that older student to also, we want them to be able to look at cursive in, a document or something and be able to read it as well. So there's even reading exercises. There's exercises for the older students that will have them taking something that, like a book or something that they are reading, and transcribe it over into cursive. So honestly, this course could vary for family style. Obviously, if a first grader is wanting to use it, then, that might be a little bit more on the parent as far as them reading to the child some of what's in there. So that kind of will depend on how low the parent wants to go with that. But as far as older students, there is a schedule and there's extra activities. The other great thing about that schedule and activities is if you have a student, say fourth grader, who goes through the full course, and then next year you still want to use that same course where they just go through it again at a quicker pace and they're using those extra activities, it gives them 2 years to really get the proficiency down and to master the skill of cursive writing.
Yeah, I love that idea of being able to reuse it again at that faster pace, so you really kind of solidify some of those skills.
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of what a day would look like? How long should each day take, and what kind of activities are included?
Sure. So every day has a Bible time. One of the other unique things of this course is that it focuses on a fishing theme, and that ties in with that visual graphic that we have included. And so we kind of have them as club members, and we've made up a club for them so that they feel like almost like a scout type club, or a nature club, that they get to earn badges as they go through the course. And so each week they have a guide, and his name is Skeeter. And I'm from the South, and so a lot of times people will say Skeeter for mosquito, but it was just a cute name to give him. And so Skeeter actually leads them in their Bible lessons. And then his sister, Susie, she actually helps them like gather all their gear, make sure that they know what they need to do. There's derbies in the course that kind of showcase their work. And then there also, Susie's daughter Anna is in the course, and she's helping the students with their gear up, which is their activities, like the exercises that they will be doing and the badges that they will be learning. The course probably should only take about 15 to 20 minutes max a day, if that. Some days will be a little bit shorter than another day, but the overall goal is for them to get in there and engage. The first day of the week kind of has a little bit more, because anything that was introduced in the course, if we talk about a rod and reel, well, that's in like an informational page at the beginning of that week. So that way they know what we're talking about. They know what it looks like. And so they're learning those terms also.
Great. I have actually had a chance to look through this course, and I have to say it is amazing. I'm excited about my kids using it. They're excited about using it. It's such a fresh look at penmanship and at looking at it from a whole child approach instead of just looking at, just the written words on the page.
Right.
Sometimes we can be really excited about a course, but then we kind of go, oh, wait, how much is going to be required of me as a parent? So what exactly is going to be required of parents using this course? Is it really parent intensive?
It's really not if your child is reading on a third grade level or above. If they're first or second grade, maybe even some third graders, they might need you to read that to them. But again, the part that would be read is just like a paragraph from Skeeter. And some days it's, like it may be that they're filling in the cursive letters to complete a verse that they're discussing. And so really, I mean, other than we list all of the supplies out ahead of time, so you could go ahead and get them. A lot of the things are reused throughout the course, and there's a note on what is used throughout the course again. So you could just have like a little box or something where everything is in there. Your child can grab it and go do it on their own.
Great. So then I think kind of as a wrap up, one thing that is a big push in all of Masterbooks courses is the biblical foundation. And so I know you've mentioned some Bible verses and a little bit of Bible teaching. How exactly is the biblical worldview seen in Catch on a Cursive?
It's there every single day. So we first start talking about the disciples and how we are to be fishers of men. We don't place the child to where all of the weight of discipleship or witnessing or any of that is on them, but more on that they are learning to do that within their family and those that they know, and that their family is leading them, their parents are leading them. And then we talk about the parables. So for the first 9 weeks is just on discipleship and like being fishers of men. And then we have the parables and the Beatitudes, which I was very excited about because I haven't personally like found a study that I felt like broke it down for the children. And so you could even use that as like memory work. I think that would be a great thing to do for that 9 weeks, is learn all of them. And then one of the 9 weeks is just on like awesome creation. And most of all of that ties back into like salmon and how they, swim upriver back to where they were born and things like that. So it still relates to the same theme, but it's pointing out like a coelacanth and how they thought it was extinct, but it's not. And it hasn't changed. And so it actually disproves evolution. So there's things like that in there that helps build that biblical worldview and, just solidify it from whatever other courses they may be doing.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this fresh take on penmanship and handwriting, and I think it's going to be a huge a blessing to really so many homeschool families. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing with us about yourself and about all of these courses that you've authored. We appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
If you would like to look at any of the courses that we talked about today, you can check those out at masterbooks.com, and we have generous previews available for each course.